The morning began like any other in Houston. Rachel Miller moved through her kitchen with the easy grace of routine. Coffee brewed in the machine, filling the house with its rich aroma. Scrambled eggs hissed on the stove while 2 slices of bread popped up from the toaster. Rachel set them neatly on a plate, spreading butter with the care of a woman who believed in small comforts. Her husband, David Miller, was flying to New York for a big business meeting. He worked as a consultant, always on the go, always flying somewhere important. Rachel was used to it by now, the endless phone calls, the late-night emails, the constant travel. But even with all that, she loved him fiercely. She had given up her own career in graphic design years ago to support his ambitions. She told herself it was worth it, that marriage was about sacrifice, about partnership. David worked hard, she reasoned, and her job was to make his life easier. That was love. That morning, she'd even tucked a note into his carry-on. Safe travels, love. Don't forget to call me when you land. She pictured him finding it in his hotel room, smiling at the thought of her. David, however, had been in a rush. He grabbed his suitcase, kissed her on the cheek without really looking at her, and bolted out the door. It wasn't until an hour later, as Rachel cleared the breakfast table, that she saw it, his maroon passport, sitting next to his half-finished coffee. Her heart sank. "Oh, David," she murmured. Without it, he wouldn't even make it past security. She quickly dialed his phone, but it went to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. She sighed, slipped on her sneakers, grabbed the passport, and headed for the garage. The thought of his panic when he discovered he'd forgotten it made her quicken her pace. She almost smiled at the idea of swooping in to save the day. Maybe he'd even brag about her later. "My wife saved my whole trip." The drive to George Bush Intercontinental Airport was mercifully light for a weekday morning. Rachel parked, rushed inside, and scanned the bustling terminal for David's familiar frame. She held the passport tightly in her hand, ready to surprise him. Then she saw him. And the world tilted. There, by the Delta Airlines check-in counter, stood David. He wasn't alone. A woman stood with him, tall, striking, with long, dark hair and a sharp navy blazer. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine. But it wasn't her beauty that froze Rachel's breath, it was the way David touched her. His arm rested snugly around her waist, his head bent close to hers. He whispered something, and the woman laughed, tilting her head back. Then David leaned forward, pressing his forehead against hers in an intimacy so casual, so natural, it could only come from habit. Rachel's knees weakened. The passport nearly slipped from her hand. For a wild moment, she thought maybe she was wrong. Maybe it wasn't David. Maybe her mind was playing tricks. But then he turned his head slightly, and she saw the familiar scar above his eyebrow, the curve of his jaw. It was him, her husband. Her world collapsed. Her breathing came in shallow, panicked gasps. She wanted to scream, to run, to throw the passport at his head. But her legs wouldn't move. And then he saw her. David froze, his face draining of color. The woman, noticing his distraction, followed his gaze. Her smile faltered, annoyance flashing across her face like Rachel's presence was some kind of inconvenience. Rachel lifted the passport with trembling fingers. Her voice, when it came, was thin but sharp enough to cut the air. "You forgot this." Conversations around them stilled. A few travelers slowed, pretending not to stare but very much staring. David dropped his arm from the woman's waist as though burned. "Rachel," he stammered, his voice cracking. What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" Rachel repeated softly, her throat burning. "I came to bring you your passport." The woman scoffed, clearly irritated, and with a toss of her hair, she muttered something and walked briskly toward security, her heels echoing against the tiled floor. Rachel's eyes locked on David. "You have another woman?" His head jerked side to side, desperate to quiet her. "Rachel, please. Not here. Don't make a scene." Her laugh was bitter, broken. "A scene? David, I caught you with your mistress at the airport. I was here, saving you, bringing you the passport you forgot. And you're worried about a scene. Please," he begged, reaching for her hand. She snatched it away like his touch was poison. Tears blurred her vision. Rage warred with heartbreak inside her chest. She shoved the passport hard against his chest. Here, don't miss your flight. And before he could utter another word, Rachel turned and walked away. Her steps were shaky, but her spine was straight. She wouldn't collapse in the terminal, not in front of strangers. By the time she reached her car, her body gave in. She sobbed violently against the steering wheel, the betrayal playing over and over in her mind like a cruel movie. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. Please don't do this. We'll talk when I get back. It's not what it looks like. Rachel let out a jagged laugh. The audacity. She typed back, safe travels, David. Don't bother coming back home. And with shaking hands, she drove off. Rachel didn't go home. She couldn't face the walls of that house, the pictures of their wedding, the bed they once shared. Every corner would feel like a lie. Instead, she drove to her sister Emily's house on the other side of town. Emily opened the door, took one look at her tear-streaked face, and pulled her into a hug. What happened? Rachel broke. She poured everything out, the forgotten passport, the airport, the woman. Emily's arms tightened around her. That son of a Emily's voice shook with anger. Rachel, I swear, if he sets foot here, Rachel let out a broken laugh, tears still streaming. I feel like such a fool, Em. I stood there holding his passport like some loyal wife while he was holding another woman like she was, me. Emily cupped her face. Listen to me. You are not the fool. He is. You gave him everything and he threw it away. That's on him, not you. Rachel stayed with Emily that night, curled up on the couch under a blanket. She barely slept, replaying the moment at the airport in her mind, over and over. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw David's guilty face, the way the woman rolled her eyes and walked away. By morning, David's texts flooded her phone. Rachel, please, it's not what you think. Vanessa doesn't mean anything. You're my wife. We'll talk when I'm back. Don't overreact. Overreact. The word cut deep. She ignored every message. 2 days later, David returned from New York. He walked into the Miller house, suitcase in hand, and found Rachel waiting, not at home, but at Emily's, where he'd been told to meet her if he wanted to talk. When he arrived, Emily stood at the door like a guard dog. She doesn't owe you a damn thing, David. If you want to talk, keep it short. And don't you dare raise your voice. David sighed, defeated, and stepped inside. Rachel sat at the kitchen table, arms folded, eyes hard. Rachel, he began softly. Please, let me explain. She raised a hand. How long? He blinked. What? How long have you been seeing her? He exhaled shakily. A few months. But it's not Rachel. It's not what it looked like. Not what it looked like? Her laugh was sharp. You held her like she was your wife. You touched her like I don't remember you touching me in years. Don't insult me with lies. I was stressed. Work's been insane. I made a mistake. His voice cracked. But I love you. You're my wife. Vanessa is nothing compared to you. Rachel's eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. Nothing? Then why was she the one in your arms while I was driving across the city to save you? Why did she get your affection while I got your indifference? David reached for her hand desperately. Rachel, please. Don't throw away 6 years over one mistake. She pulled back, shaking her head. I didn't throw anything away, David. You did. The moment you chose her, you chose to burn down everything we built. Emily stood by the counter, arms crossed, glaring. You're lucky she's even giving you 5 minutes. If it were me, I'd have your clothes in garbage bags on the curb. David shot her a look, but Rachel's cold silence silenced him. Over the following weeks, he tried everything: flowers, dinners, apologies. He promised counseling. He promised to change. But every promise only reminded Rachel of the airport, of the humiliation that could never be undone. She moved into Emily's spare room permanently. At first, the nights were lonely, filled with restless tossing and muffled sobs. But slowly, she began to find clarity. She dug out her old graphic design portfolio, the one she had shelved years ago. She started freelancing again, taking on projects, feeling pieces of herself come alive. For the first time in years, she was living for herself, not for David. One evening, she sat in a cafe downtown, sketching out a design on her laptop when she caught her reflection in the window. She looked different. Tired, yes, but sharper. Stronger. She realized she didn't miss David's voice anymore. She didn't miss the lies. She missed herself, the woman she used to be before she shrank to fit his needs. And now she was finding her again. Weeks later, she returned to the Miller house to pack her belongings. David tried one last time, standing in the doorway, begging, "Rachel, please. We can fix this. Don't do this." She placed the house key on the counter. Beside it, she left a note. "David, you forgot something too. You forgot me. And now I'm done reminding you." She walked out without looking back. Rachel Miller wasn't the woman who saved her husband at the airport anymore. She was the woman who saved herself. 6 months later, Rachel barely recognized the woman she had become. Her freelancing had grown into a full-fledged design studio in downtown Houston. She rented a small but stylish office space, hired 2 interns from the university, and was now landing contracts with local businesses. Every morning, she walked into her office with coffee in hand, greeted by a mural she had painted herself, "Create your own freedom." She felt alive again. Sometimes she thought of David, but not with longing. Only with a strange, detached pity. She had given him 6 years of her life, and he had traded it for a woman who didn't even stay. Because Vanessa hadn't stayed. Word got back to Rachel through a mutual acquaintance. Apparently, Vanessa had grown tired of David after a few months. She was never looking for permanence, only the thrill of being wanted, of being spoiled. When David suggested something more serious, she laughed in his face. "I'm not wife material," she told him before disappearing from his life as easily as she had entered. And David? He was left with nothing but regret. He tried calling Rachel again, but she had long since blocked his number. He even emailed her, pouring out his heart in long, rambling paragraphs, but she never responded. Eventually, he stopped trying. Rachel had moved on. Her sister Emily noticed it too. One evening over dinner, Emily leaned back with a smirk. "You know, sis, I don't think I've ever seen you this happy. Not even when you were first married." Rachel smiled softly. "That's because I finally stopped living for him. I started living for me." Emily raised her glass. "To you, then." To Rachel Miller, the woman who saved herself. They clinked glasses, laughter filling the room. Rachel knew healing wasn't always linear. Some nights were still hard, when memories crept in uninvited. But every time she looked at what she was building, every time she felt the quiet strength in her chest, she knew she had chosen right. David had lost her the moment he embraced Vanessa at that airport, and Rachel? She had found herself.